Welcome to E-commerce with Coffee, a podcast powered by Amber Engine, where we share e-com secrets for brands over your favorite brew. We start with the caffeine and then leap enthusiastically into behind-the-scenes e-com insights that led to the success of our guests. I'm Nate Svoboda, and I'm about to serve you up the best. Let's get started. Hey, Emily, welcome to our episode of E-commerce with Coffee. How are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
I am doing fantastic. Thank you for asking. So for our listeners, today we are speaking to Emily Ferguson. She's the director of e-commerce at Marie Claire. Today we're going to talk about how to start e-commerce in a light and agile way, some ideas around planning content in terms of how to make the most ROI back for e-commerce, and then talking about the actual ways to work products and work people down through your funnel in terms of the content that you're creating and preparing for the future of retail. So Emily, I mean, you've had a really interesting career, right? I mean, you just started out in banking right out of university,
I
right?
did. I did, yeah.
And then you left to start your own fashion affiliate tech startup. And you've been at Marie Claire for, I believe, about 4 years.
I have, yeah. I've been at Marie Claire for 4 years now,
would
yeah.
would love if you could talk us through, how did you get to where you are today?
Well, so I did a maths and finance degree, and then I went into banking because I think at the time I always wanted to set up my own business and I didn't quite know what direction to take. And the opportunity came up to go and work in a bank. And actually, it was a really good learning experience in terms of, attention to detail. There was 5 or 6 different trading times a day. You had to trade equities within 15 minutes to be approved by FSA guidelines. So at least it was at the time. I don't know what the guidelines are now, but so it's a very fast-paced environment. Working with a lot of money. I worked in the private bank, so I was dealing with very successful, dynamic people. So it was a really interesting experience. But ultimately, I just wanted to go and run my own business. And then, from research and just loving sort of like fashion and loving everything online, I just kind of like threw myself into running an e-com fashion business. Learned all of the kind of the trade, and I think once you run your own business, you learn more from doing that than you do sort of in 5 years working for another company. You learn more in like 5 minutes than you do. So I was really lucky to be quite exposed to a lot of that earlier on. I mean, it was quite hard. I had 2 different part-time jobs that I used to run, to these different jobs while still working on my business. But it was a great learning experience. The business itself was really a real great learning experience. I would think I was very naive, obviously, probably at the time when I started it up. But I think perseverance and strength and resilience probably kept me going to where I am. So that was pretty good. And then in terms of, where I kind of see my career, I've been very lucky at Marie Claire to be there for 4 years. I feel like I've kind of come home a little bit. I find like my little place that I'm very happy in. I'm very lucky to work with such lovely, dynamic women. We have and have the ability and the autonomy to kind of go and create and build exciting new and innovative products for Marie Claire. It's just a bit of a dream come true, really.
So, I mean, I'd be really curious to know when you went and started this business, right? I believe the title of it was Free to Be Supreme. Online marketing was a fairly new concept, right? I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
you had no templated websites to choose from. You had to do everything with design partners. So I guess if you think about that whole part of your career journey, what was the hardest part for you? What was the thing
I
you
think
learned most?
Oh, definitely. I mean, the relationship side of things, I find that easy. Like, I was able to build relationships with all the major fashion brands quite quickly. I was getting invited to press days within like a couple of months. And it was, that was very kind of, I find that very natural part of the progression. I think probably the tech side of things, I think I really struggled with. Just because you're right, there was no real off-the-shelf solution back then. I think that yeah, I mean, I remember one of the brands that I sort of still follow now. I remember back in the day they were still a directory,
Oh, wow.
So so it
Yeah.
was like, it was still a directory, and I remember it like, and actually it's so funny to see, how, my kind of like ideas and what I'm doing has evolved, but also, the brands around me.
No, absolutely. Now, I mean, I'd really like to talk a little bit about your current role at Marie Claire. So my understanding at a high level, right, is your focus as, how can we bring in new streams of revenue to the business, right? Focusing specifically in terms of e-commerce. Would love to hear a little bit more about where your role sits today, because my understanding it's sort of in between the advertising and the editorial portions.
Yeah, so I mean, well, it's kind of across quite a lot of different things. So in my team, I have I sit with advertising. So I don't sit in advertising, but I work with advertising. I help advertising. If there's an advertising deal that can be done with with the Marie Claire edit, for example, or with the beauty drawer, then I'm very much involved in that. I'm also very involved in the design and branding process. So I sort of take the lead on that. I also manage the account managers that design and develop and the relationships now with the brands. And then I also sit within technical development as well. So I manage the technical team behind the Marie Claire edit, and then obviously all of our high level partners that we work with on other initiatives as well. So I work closely with them.
So it seems like you have your hands in a lot of different areas in the business. So I mean, I guess
Yeah.
what is your most favorite thing to do in the day to day in terms of your area to focus?
What's my favorite thing to do? Gosh, that's a good question. I feel like I get pulled in so many different directions. Do you know what my favorite thing to do is to do the design and the development. And I think the technical development I'm very passionate about.
No,
I'm very
absolutely.
passionate to be able to kind of take a concept, or to see the technical development of the edit, and that the technical development this year will really supercharge. So that's very exciting. That's a very exciting thing for me to know that something we built, and it was a small prototype, and we were only able to build it back in. I mean, that was one of the reasons why I got hired at Marie Claire, was they acquired an old business called Love Fashion Sales, which effectively was the fashion aggregator that I did back 10 years ago. But it was something, and actually I remember that brand back then as well, so it was around then as well, so it's quite funny. But that brand, we ended up, but when I got it, it needed updating, it needed refreshing. But that's that technology, we've seen that evolve, and we've used parts of it, and we've kind of evolved the concept, and so that's taken a lot of time to do that. But that's a really exciting journey for me, and I'm probably not patient enough, because I want to see it develop more and more and more.
Well, that's fair enough, but I feel like of all the things could to be built, it's really interesting to see how far technology has come in the past 5 to 10 years, right? I mean, in
Oh,
terms of
I mean,
software
yeah.
development, building websites, I mean, all of the things you can do. It's really,
Yeah,
really
it's
interesting.
amazing, and I love that. I think that definitely, that is probably the most exciting part of my job, and I think the edit is definitely like my little baby. Like I'm very, very I just want it to do really well. Like that's kind of like my big goal. I want it to do really, really well. We're about to launch it in America as well, this at some point this year, so that's very exciting as well.
Absolutely. Well, I'll be really interested. It'd be really exciting to see that once it gets launched, and I'll be interested to take a look at it. Well, so,
Thanks.
Emily, we've talked a little bit before about starting e-commerce in a light and agile way for businesses, right? I'd really love if you could talk to what are things that a brand can do to ensure that starting in e-commerce, they're doing so, like I said, in a light and agile way.
I mean, the thing is, that is such an amazing thing, and it's something that I feel like that was a very hard lesson for me to learn when I started my own business. Because I feel like now with the edit, like I've taken my time, I've done things in a very light and very agile way. I think for brands or for people wanting to start out, use Shopify, use all of the kind of the technology, be a social first business. You need a good concept, a good idea, you need a good marketing advertisements, and use that as a way to kind of like grow and build your audience base. I mean, we didn't have what you guys have now in terms of that social first businesses where you can go online, you can buy sponsored ads, and you can sell a load of products through that. That just didn't exist. We were all trying to fight and play this SEO game, which, unless you're a big player, is pretty much, impossible. So, I mean, I think now is probably the most opportunity people have had to be able to build brands online.
So, and absolutely, and I appreciate you sharing that. And so, obviously, you're a bit more of a creative person, right? That's something that we've talked about, and that's something that you have a passion for. If we're thinking about the types of content that brands should be creating, right, for their social posts, blogs, the videos that they're developing, what are some of the key considerations when they're building out a content strategy in terms of, like which types of content get the best engagement in your experience from what you've seen?
So again, I mean, this all comes down to using the right tools. I really have a hero product that I love to use, which is SEMrush. It's a product that I think is really good, really useful. And so I think it's just arming yourself with the right knowledge. Like, I can't ring through all of the different things that I think would work, but I think it's about getting the right research tools, making the right, decisions in terms of content, but also finding that hook. If you've got something online or if you've got a piece of content, and first party personalized content, I feel always can work the best, where someone's explaining why they had a pain point or why they bought that product. That personal touch really makes a difference online.
And I hate to put you on the spot like this, but I mean, are there any, examples you can think of like a really good piece of audio visual content that you've seen recently that stands out to you?
Well, I would say the Net-a-Porter beauty shoppable video that we've just done. No, so I was thinking, so there's the Peloton ads. I don't know if you've seen those. They're really good and they're really engaging, and I think it really makes you want to buy one of those machines. And I think you've got to find that sweet spot with your advertising and with your marketing.
No, that's absolutely fair. They're one of those brands that every time I see an ad for it, I get closer and closer to buying it. You'd purchase have to make, but you get really close.
Yeah.
Well, so we talked a lot about partnerships, right? And some of the key partnerships that you made in your previous life that helped you, catapult and, begin your career into the world of fashion. What are some of the partnerships brands can be making in terms of, you talked about some of the tools that you like to leverage. What are some of those partnerships that should be focused on developing to help with strategy development, content creation, kind of from your experience?
So do you know what? The biggest partner you can have is yourself. And I think it's just about taking yourself out there and just going for it. Do you know what I mean? Like, don't wait for the big idea, or, don't wait for, oh, I'll do this when I've got that. Just go out there and just try something, whether it's you've made a necklace and go and sell it online, or whether you've, you're really into fitness, go and start, filming some fitness videos and see where it takes you, And I think not have a low expectation of where to start, but I think like have a manage your own expectations, say, hey, 3 people watched my video today, and that's great. But this time in 2 years it could be 20,000 people watching my video, and I think you've got to manage your own expectations and be your own kind of hero. And in terms of strategy, like, just talk to as many people as possible. I think getting out there, like getting advice from people, reaching out to people, actually, one of the girls who works for me now actually reached out to me on LinkedIn because she wanted me to mentor her because she worked in banking. She wanted to work in fashion, but she'd also set up her own publishing fashion magazine, like women's magazine. So I was like, well, of course I'm going to have to hire you now. So, it's just about reaching out to people, and, don't be afraid to, make mistakes in your career and say, right, this isn't for me. This industry isn't for me. I'm going to try and start something else. I think that's something else. I think a lot of people, and I remember whenever I was younger feeling very stuck, oh, I've got to do this, and I'm in this box now, and this is where I need to be. And I just feel like, don't put yourself in a box, because you don't need to be in one.
No, absolutely. One of my favorite phrases is, fail fast and fail forward and fail fast.
Fail fast. Right? Oh yeah, totally. I mean, like, looking at it now, and the thing is, it always comes full circle. As long as you carry on, if you have determination and you carry on, all the things you're like, oh, about at the time are the things that you're like, yeah, I did that. Yeah. And later on, and you've got to kind of take that.
No, that's absolutely that's fair enough. Um, I guess one thing, it's really hard sometimes to estimate ROI for a business, right? But in order to get leadership on board when you have an idea, you need to be able to communicate what is the value at the end of the day going to be to the business.
Yeah.
How have you gone about having those conversations in terms of communicating the ROI for content that's being developed if you have an idea that you want to run with?
So, I mean, I think I was quite lucky. Like I had a good 18 months of grinding at Marie Claire before we launched the edit. But also it's about, the P&L projections. It's about growth. It's about, I think, showing your ability to do other things as well. If you are constantly delivering on something that maybe isn't as exciting to you as something you really want to do, that shows the person, okay, they can really deliver. And then when you come to them with an idea, they're going to say, okay, that's potential. And also, don't go in and say, I want, £500,000. Be agile and think about, how can I create this on a shoestring budget?
No, absolutely. So show yourself before you make the asks.
Yeah. Oh, big time. I cannot stress that enough. And it's still something that I really believe in now. Like, I think you learn more by starting off slow than you do by just funneling money into something that you don't know is going to work or not.
No, that's absolutely fair. Obviously we're coming close to the time here. A couple of the questions that I really wanted to ask you about, Marie Claire has a very recognizable brand. What are some of the things that businesses can do to ensure or build up that recognizable brand personality, especially as consumers are increasingly attaching, to the loyalty they develop to a specific brand?
I think it's all about the story of the brand and the purpose that the brand shows. A lot of brands now, like if you have a sustainability angle, like people love that. People want to know that you're not just out there to take money. You're actually out there to help change the world, with what you're doing. And I think that's really important. We sponsor Plan International with Marie Claire Edit. It's our charity partner, and it's a really nice thing to be able to say, hey, we're doing all this fun stuff over here, but actually this is the stuff that really matters, and we're actually changing the lives of young people around the world by helping to educate women. And that actually really, I mean, that's kind of like, why else do you get out of bed in the morning other than to do stuff that kind of like can make a difference? I think we all should be pretty humbled by our backgrounds here, and in everything, we have the ability and the opportunity to go to school, get an education, and it's something that's not accessible to everybody.
No, absolutely. So, I mean, it's not just enough for the business to have its values, right? It actually needs to be doing something about it, and then communicate what that is and why it matters. Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. And also, the person behind the brand has to be personable. They have to tell a story. They can't be. I think the more real you are, the more people will kind of like warm towards you. If you look at all the influencers now, they're kind of like doing this is the Instagram shop, but this was the reality. And like, it does help to kind of like normalize people, rather than kind of create like a perfect image that isn't necessarily true.
No, that's absolutely true. Do you think that there's any difference in the way that can be, or well, I think the answer to that is yes, but how can a business, or how does a business portray that message differently when it's doing it on like their Instagram page versus their website versus, the different channels that they leverage?
I think that element works well for influencers, because I think they put that kind of very, that image out there. And I think it's quite refreshing actually to see women, showing different elements of their body and saying, hey, this is normal to, have a stretch mark, or, things like that. And I think it's quite empowering actually for women. But I think in terms of businesses, it's more about, like I said, who you're supporting, what kind of charities you're supporting, or whose lives are you changing when you purchase this product, or are you, offsetting your carbon footprint when you purchase something, and I think these are things that really matter to the generation coming up that are kind of going to be the biggest spenders.
Absolutely. And obviously you've been in this realm of e-commerce for so long, and with the massive amount of change we've seen with the pandemic in the past 12 to 14 months or so, what has the biggest change that you've noticed been with the way that people are engaging with brands online?
Do you know what I find? I think I feel firstly, I think it's been a really difficult time for a lot of people. But I feel like we've been quite lucky because obviously everything's gone online, and I think it's probably brands that maybe haven't embraced that online presence have probably felt that, that shift a lot higher than what, obviously what I have.
No, that's absolutely fair enough. Well, Emily, it's been a pleasure speaking with you. I really appreciate the time that you've given us today. Yeah, I mean, I hope that we can have you on for future episodes to take advantage of the wealth of knowledge that you
Yeah,
have.
I would love to do that. Once, so I've just, like I said, we're going to be launching in America. So once we've kind of launched in America, why don't we kind of catch up again in maybe the next 6 months? I'd love to.
Beautiful. Absolutely. Let's do that. Well, hey, appreciate the time today. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day. And thank you for being on our show. That's it for this episode of E-commerce with Coffee, powered by Amber Engine. If you haven't gotten your fix yet, be sure to get more e-commerce brand secrets on our website at amberengine.com. And don't forget to subscribe for more episodes.